Hi, and welcome to this short webinar by Consortium looking at how to develop your volunteer programme. So this webinar will look firstly at the initial planning stages, so thinking about getting organisation approval, diversity, looking at budget, and then your volunteer policy. We'll then look at recruitment, identifying your organisation's needs, advertising your volunteer opportunities, and finding the right people. We'll then look at induction, so role and task expectations, and looking at a volunteer agreement. And lastly, we'll look at retention, so keeping volunteers engaged, conflict management, and showing volunteers they're valued. So the initial stages of planning your volunteer programme, you need to make sure you've actually got organisation approval. So do get the support of your managers, your board of trustees or board of directors, of staff, and indeed service users. Make sure that they understand the importance of setting aside time, resources, and money, and what your volunteers will get back in return. Also think about diversity. Just because we work in the LGBT sector doesn't mean we automatically address diversity. So do make sure that equality and diversity are included in all the stages of your volunteer programme. You might want to link up with other local community groups to gain advice on how best to address diversity needs, or for support with actually advertising your posts. For example, a group working with individuals with disabilities may be able to provide advice and guidance on how best to support volunteers with disabilities. They may even be able to visit your centre and advise on accessibility. As part of your initial planning, it's really important to consider budget because volunteering isn't free. So you'll need to consider the costs and make sure that you do actually have a budget for it, thinking about travel and any other out-of-pocket expenses you may pay volunteers, the cost of possible training, equipment they may need to do the role, uniforms, for example, as well as calculating your management time. And it is really important to think this through in detail to help plan your volunteer programme. So for example, if you recruit 10 volunteers who can all give 1 hour each, this will obviously require a larger budget than 5 volunteers each giving 2 hours in terms of travel costs, management time, and so on. So it is really important to look at the big picture. You may also need to consider insurance implications. So do speak to your insurance company and ask what the implications are of involving volunteers. It may not actually impact on the insurance cost, but it may require, for example, a change to your statement of facts. So the next stage in planning your volunteer programme is putting together a volunteer policy. And our volunteer toolkit contains a template document which you can use and adapt to suit your individual needs. So policy should include information around your organisational values, around your volunteer recruitment process, volunteer agreements, out-of-pocket expenses, induction and training and ongoing support, information around insurance, a confidentiality statement, and information around health and safety and equal opportunities, and a complaints and grievances procedure. And again, it is really important to put the time into thinking through these specific policy areas and ensuring that your completed policy document is clear and explicit on the procedures and processes. And this will also hopefully help avoid issues or conflicts down the line. So for example, the reimbursement of out-of-pocket expenses needs to clearly state what can and cannot be claimed. For example, do you have an upper limit that can be claimed regardless of the actual travel costs? If meals or refreshments are reimbursed, again, is there an upper limit? And is this only available for those volunteering for a particular time frame? For example, a shift of 2 hours or more. Do you reimburse on the same day or at the end of a specific period? So the more detail you can include in your policy, the less likely there will be misinterpretations and issues. This is a quote from one of our consortium members, the Proud Trust. They've said, people volunteer for a whole host of reasons: to give something back, to feel needed, to to gain status when they might not have it elsewhere in their lives, for CV building, or to find a home or community. It's therefore important that you decide how many of these you want to appeal to and set up your recruitment messages and retention plans to match with these. So again, it is really important to think this through during the planning stages to try and minimise potential issues. So smaller groups, for example, may need to look at taking on volunteers with existing relevant skills and experience, as they may not have the time or capacity to provide ongoing training and support. So we're now looking at the recruitment stage, and the first thing is to think about the needs of your organisation and how volunteers may be able to help. Depending on the nature of the role, you may wish to develop a formal role description, or it may be a more informal invitation to help. Think about any relevant skills, experience or qualifications you may require. And think about whether there are specific days or times that volunteers would be of most help. Our toolkit contains a role development template to help you think through and record all of these details. When it comes to advertising your volunteer opportunities, let your local networks and existing team know and make use of social media to spread the word. A number of organisations can also help you to recruit, so think about contacting your local volunteer centre, universities and colleges. There are some job recruitment sites that allow volunteer role adverts for free, such as charity jobs. And of course, don't forget consortium members can advertise via our website. And as we've mentioned, you might want to contact other local organisations who represent different members of the community in order to ensure your advert is reaching a diverse audience. When it comes to finding the right people, it can be helpful to use a basic application form, especially if you're looking for particular skills, experience or qualifications. It's important to meet prospective volunteers, but do try to keep meetings informal and remember it's not a job interview. Smaller organisations with limited capacity might want to have an initial phone meeting before arranging a physical meetup. You'll also need to carry out relevant checks, such as taking up references and a DBS check if they'll be working with children or vulnerable adults. And our toolkit contains the relevant contact details if you need support with identifying the correct DBS level to process, as well as the contact information for their sensitive applications team who support trans applicants who may struggle with ID in different names. You may also want to offer a trial day, but do be very clear regarding the purpose and potential outcome of this. Some people may think if they're attending a trial day, for example, that their role has actually started, so it does need to be clear if it's part of your selection process. Once you've recruited your volunteers, you'll need to make sure you provide an induction. Now, this doesn't have to be complicated or too time-consuming, but it is essential. The actual process may vary because different volunteers will need different levels of training depending on the role they're carrying out and on their existing skills and experience. Do be very clear during the induction exactly what is expected in terms of role and tasks, and don't forget practical details like what days and times the person will be volunteering. Is this flexible, or is there a rota, for example? As part of your induction process, introduce your new volunteers to the team and to members and show them around the premises. If it's an operational role and they'll be working from home, an e-introduction via email provides a nice welcome. Address practicalities such as providing an ID badge, IT systems, equipment and so on. And consider welcoming your new volunteers via social media post or a blog on your website. As part of the induction process, it's important to get a volunteer agreement in place. Our volunteer toolkit does contain a template agreement which you can use and adapt to suit your individual needs. Agreement should ideally include the volunteer's name and their role and the location where they will be volunteering, the days and times they'll be volunteering if that's applicable, the name of their supervisor and contact details, and then a summary of your organisation's commitment to the volunteer and a summary of the volunteer's commitment to your organisation. The agreement should be signed and dated and kept on file, and volunteers may also like to keep their own copy. Having a written agreement in place can again help avoid misunderstandings or conflicts, and it also gives you a clear point of reference to refer to if issues do arise. Volunteers are a great asset to your organisation, so you will want to keep them engaged and happy. Schedule time to check in and see how they're getting on. And whilst it is important that volunteers feel supported in their roles, this doesn't have to involve endless appraisals, one-to-ones or forms to complete, just a regular check-in for a catch-up. Our toolkit contains a really simple, short template to use if you do require a written record, and this can be helpful to refer back to at subsequent catch-ups. And as with the volunteer agreement, having brief notes of your meetings can help to avoid misunderstandings or conflicts, and it gives you that clear point of reference to refer back to if issues do arise. As part of the process of keeping your volunteers engaged, find out how volunteers would like to develop in their roles and keep them informed of any training or development opportunities. Remember, skills development doesn't necessarily require individuals to attend expensive training courses. They may be able to shadow a colleague or try out a new task with support from a team member. This is what one of our members, Totnes Pride, has to say. Managing volunteers is about getting to know them, finding out what they want to do, and making sure they have the information, training, and opportunity to do it well. Hopefully, if you've put in the preparation and planning, then conflict situations will be minimum, but unfortunately sometimes issues will arise or a volunteer may not be right for the role, and it is important to address any such issues as soon as they become apparent. Talk things through with the volunteer with sensitivity and an approach that's focused on finding solutions. Often it may be a miscommunication that can be easily rectified. If there is a conflict between your organisation's needs and the volunteer's expectations, try to explore compromises. So, for example, if a volunteer is unable to commit to your weekly rota, is it viable for them to volunteer once a month? But if the issue is too significant or cannot be resolved, consider if there are other volunteer roles within your organisation that they would be better suited to. Often volunteers that are unsuitable for a particular role are kept on in order to avoid conflict and through a sense of gratitude that the individual is giving up their time. However, it is important to consider the needs of your members and your organisation and accept that some volunteers simply may not be suitable. Ultimately, you may need to let the volunteer go from their role, which requires sensitivity. Thank them for all the time they have given, and if it's possible and appropriate, direct them to other more suitable volunteer opportunities in the area, such as helping to arrange an appointment with their local volunteer centre. Happy and fulfilled volunteers will stay longer, do better, and help you more. You don't need to put on lavish events to show your volunteers your appreciation. Simple steps like celebrating your volunteers' birthdays or recognising great work and dedication in a mail out can be nice. Have a think about a small celebration once a year while still appreciating them the other 364 days of the year. There is a National Volunteer Week on the 1st to the 7th of June, which is a great opportunity to celebrate your volunteers. There are also a range of awards you can consider as a way to show your volunteers just how much they are valued. Find out if your local authority or volunteer centre runs any award schemes. Youth projects, for example, can apply to the Jack Petchey scheme, which includes a leader award with the volunteers nominated by your youth members. And it's not all about winning. Simply being nominated can help your team feel valued. So, for example, if you are required to provide a written nomination, share the nomination with your volunteers. And if there are no official award schemes in your area, Why not create your own and have a Volunteer of the Year? The NCVO has calculated that organisations typically get a 5-fold return on their investment in volunteering. So if you invest £1 in volunteering, your organisation gets £5 worth back. The initial investment, be it of money, time or effort, reaps far greater rewards than trying to do it all yourself. And of course, you'll enjoy the non-financial benefits of working with volunteers. Volunteers can grow your organisation and increase capacity. More people means working with more beneficiaries. Having volunteers and peer-led projects can also help you gain access to funding. If you can demonstrate that you have a good volunteering programme, it can add to your chances of securing funding. Your organisation can also enrich the lives of more LGBT people. So volunteering encourages active citizenship, reduces isolation, has a positive impact on mental and physical health, teaches people new skills, and increases the confidence of those involved. We all know how much LGBT communities need to address these issues, and you can help them do that. We hope you found this short webinar useful and that it can get you started on developing your volunteer programme. For further support, consortium members can access a range of resources on our website, but remember you must be signed in, and you can access support from our engagement team. If your group is not a member of consortium, do get in touch or visit our website to find out how you can join. And if your group needs further support around developing your volunteer programme, or if you'd like to access the toolkit that accompanies this webinar, or any further training as part of our skills and development training programme, please do get in touch with our engagement team.